Hello, thanks for checking out the video and welcome to my channel, Jersey Shore Pondscapes Videos. My name is Chris. If you're new here, we talk all about koi ponds, water gardens, waterfalls, filtration, fish, aquatic plants, the whole bit. Please check out my videos. I have a ton of videos here on this channel on so many different topics with a lot of information that I hope can help you guys out. If you're looking to build a new pond, or you have a pond and you have some questions, or you want to learn more about it, that's what we're here for. I've got a ton of videos here for you guys. For those of you who have subscribed to my channel, I'd like to thank you for your support. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to continue to try to give you guys as many videos as I can. All right. So let's dive into today's topic. Today's video is basically going to be about putting drainage underneath your pond, underneath the pond liner, underneath that fiberglass or plastic shell, whichever it may be. Now we need to do this because we're digging a hole, and any groundwater or excessive rainwater will find its way down in that hole. And if the soil that we have here at our homes is not able to absorb that water into the ground quickly, then that water can build up underneath the pond liner and create a negative pressure, and your pond liner will start to float. Or your preformed shell, fiberglass, plastic, whatever it may be, could raise up and pick up out of the ground. And sometimes when this happens, it gets all crazy, contorted and twisted. What happens as well, which is really, really difficult to deal with, is sometimes when water gets underneath our liners and lifts our liners up, any kind of shelves and stuff that we may have in the pond, the integrity of those shells could be messed up, right? Sometimes they wash down into the bottom, and we have to basically pull the pond out and reconstruct it because all those shelves and levels and stuff might all be mush underneath there. Okay, so what we really need to be concerned with is if you have an area, we're building this pond where you have a lot of heavy, hard clay type soils that are not going to allow that water to seep into the ground underneath the pond. All right. The other thing we have to be careful of is putting our ponds next to a patio. It's a great idea. It looks awesome. It's a nice place to put it, but we have to keep in mind how much water might be running off of that patio in a heavy rainstorm. And if that water is running down the patio, a lot of times patios have a pitch right away from the house, away from a pool, whatever. That water is going to be running down and going down in the hole underneath the pond. Also, gutters, drain pipes, leaders, stuff like this. Okay, when we have that downspout coming down off your gutters on the house, where is that water going? Is if that water is coming out on the ground anywhere near the pond, and that goes down under your pond, there's a lot of water coming down there. Okay, so we're going to have a big problem. So anytime we have gutters, leaders, and stuff coming down the side of your house, and it's near a pond, we need to be able to pipe that water out someplace away from your pond. Okay, so we're going to talk here today specifically about a job I did probably about 12-15 years ago up in White Plains, New York. The owner of this property was a good friend of a client of mine, and my client had referred me to him. He had two ponds built before. Well, the same pond built twice. Both times he had problems with the water. Groundwater came in the hole, in heavy rains, the whole liner lifted, all his rocks and gravel got all twisted and messed up. Half of his liner floated. His skimmer box on the side of the pond would float and lift right up out of the ground and rip off of the liner. He had that done twice. Okay, so the guy did it the first time. We had this problem. He simply pulled the pond apart, rebuilt it, the same way, and the same thing happened again. All right. So that's where I came in. Now this pond was pretty far away from me. It was at times with traffic going through New York, it was 3 hours to get there for me. But out of respect, you know, for my client who gave him my name, I knew I can do the job, and I agreed to do it. So we ripped that whole pond out of the ground, and we rebuilt this one you see back here. As soon as I got to this guy's house, I saw his property, I realized that you know, he had a high water table, because that wooden stockade fence there on the side of his property, the other side of that fence was just a vacant lot, and it was a wooded lot, and there was all kinds of standing water out there. So I knew the water wasn't soaking into the ground. So when we had heavy rainstorms, or in the early spring we have a lot of snow melt, the water table is extremely high. So what we needed to do was to rebuild this pond and put drainage underneath it that would allow any water that, you know, seeped into the hole under the liner to escape freely. Okay. So we're going to talk about how to do that briefly, okay? So I got my little tablet here. We're going to draw some pictures for you so you can kind of see what's going on, and you know, we'll go from there, okay? So all right, so let's just say here's our ground level, okay? We're going to build our pond here in our ground level. We're just going to, you know, dig our hole, okay? Real simple. So what we need to do is underneath this pond, we need to dig a pit, okay? And I'll detail this in a bit. But something, I don't know, depending on how big the pond is, one pit may be enough. You may need 2 or 3 pits, okay? Depending on how big we're going. But for this pond, we used 1 pit. And the pit, I want to say, was roughly 2.5 foot round, and maybe 1.5 foot to 2 foot deep. Then what we did is we took a 3-inch PVC pipe and we put it down that hole, maybe 2/3 of the way down the hole. We put a 90-degree elbow on it. We came over, we did a 45 up, we did a 45-degree out, okay, out the side. Now, the whole key with this is what's going to happen. We need to make sure that our water level in the pond, all right, let's say this is our water level, okay, is above the height of this pipe over here, okay, that's exiting. All right, we need to make sure that water level is higher than the pipe that is coming out from underneath the pond. That's the whole key to making this system work, okay? Now what happens is when we have all our water in the pond, there's a lot of pressure on our liner, right, against the walls, against the bottom of the pond. So if any water comes in underneath our liner, say through the ground, it's going to go into this pit in the bottom. Now this pit we're going to fill up with a gravel, maybe like a inch and a half crushed, you know, clean crushed gravel, and being that our PVC pipe is heading straight down into that pit, but not all the way to the bottom, we can then fill that pit up with gravel, and none of the gravel is going to go into the pipe, right? Because the pipe is coming down this way and our gravel is coming down around it. The gravel is not going to go down and come up inside the pipe. So it stays nice and clean, all right? That water pressure in our liner is going to allow all the water under the pond to go down into that pit and then work its way out its easiest, most restrictive way free, right, out from underneath that pond. And that is through that pipe. Okay, so this is, you know, just a rough idea of how we did this. Now, let me just erase this. I want to draw you a diagram of how we did the pit and all, okay? But now I used a 3-inch PVC pipe. I wouldn't recommend going any smaller, But if you wanted to do something like a 4-inch pipe, that would work just as well. All right. So let's draw our little pit here, okay? Here's our little pit. So what I did basically is dug out the hole underneath the pond. We lined it with landscape fabric, okay? Once we had our landscape fabric in, we put our PVC pipe down the middle, all right? And then we elbowed it, 90-degree elbowed, you know, out. Once we, you know, had our pipe installed, then we took our gravel, right? And we filled our gravel up in the pond, in the hole. Okay, so this was all gravel and down inside the hole. Once I did that, I put a layer of a landscape fabric on the top, okay, to keep it clean. And, you know, we overlapped it, you know, up over the dirt on either side. Okay, we made it plenty big to cover the hole. And that's basically, the landscape fabric here is basically to help keep the mud and dirt out and allow just the water in, so it stays a little cleaner. Now, on top of that landscape fabric, all right, I did put like 2 extra pieces of liner over that hole as well. Okay, we put our liner in here, just extra scrap pieces on top. The purpose of that now is basically to protect my pond liner that's going in on top of it. Okay, the gravel is jagged, rough edge, you know, pointy edges, right? So I don't want to put gravel down and put my pond liner on top and fill it with water, because I don't want it to puncture through. So we're using a couple extra pieces of liner just as a cushion between the gravel and our regular pond liner. Once we're all said and done, now we're going to put our real liner in, okay? And the real liner, you know, comes up here and comes out, right? And comes up to the top. Now, I'm sorry, but with this diagram here, the PVC pipe is actually running, where are we here? Actually going to run underneath, right? All that stuff and out, all right? It's not going on top. It's my bad little drawing here, but you get the point, right? So the pipe goes in, out the side of the pit. We cover it all, everything with the landscape fabric and some pieces of liner, and put our regular liner in on top. Okay, that's basically the pit. All right, just to give you an idea, it's simple. Okay, I mean, it's not rocket science here. It's simple, but it works. And you know, this can be the difference between having a successful pond and having a real nightmare in the backyard, all right? Now, one other little drawing I want to do for you. As I mentioned, it is extremely important that the pipe that runs out from underneath your pond stay below the water level of your pond, all right? In your pond. So, now, you might be saying, okay, if I have a flat piece of ground, right? If I have a flat piece of ground and I'm building my pond in here, right? And here's my water level, okay? How am I going to keep this pipe coming out from underneath my pond below my water level when the pipe is here and my ground level is here? Okay, how is that? How am I going to do that? I can't run the pipe underground and just end it, right? It has to come out someplace on top of the ground to allow that water to flow out, right? Okay, so here's what we did. All right, I'm going to draw this for you. When we dug out our pond, we actually made the pond, you know, about at least 2 times as big as it originally was. My ground level is here, okay, and I'm going to just draw it on this side too. Okay, here's my ground level. What we ended up doing when I built the pond, all right, we dug our pond out, we put our pit down here, all right, my pipe is running out here, coming out And actually what we did, as we were digging the hole, I took about a foot of dirt and I put it all around the outside of the pond. So essentially, instead of this being our ground level, okay, I went up higher. I went up higher. And I bermed the dirt down around the sides of the pond. So my dirt now came like this. Okay? What that allows me to do is, instead of my water level being here, okay, my water level is now here. All right? And now I can take my pipe and I can bring it up to the top of where my ground was and run it out this way. Okay? So now my pipe is now below my water level of the pond. Now what really works good here, you know, so as we dug the pond, like I said, I filled this all up with the dirt, right? That was coming out of the hole of the pond. So on both sides, you know, we filled this all up with dirt. And we made a nice little berm. We planted some flowers in it. We put a couple, you know, little plants. We did all kinds of little, you know, things here, right on the side. Having that little berm around the pond, that raised dirt around the pond, also really helped, because any groundwater or any rainwater or anything runs off away from the pond and around the pond, rather than all going on a flat piece of ground and falling in the hole underneath the pond. Okay, it's being diverted and pushed off. Okay, it's like building a house, right? When you build a house, you raise the foundation up higher than the ground level, right? And then you push dirt up against the foundation and grade it all away, so it pitches and slopes away from the house, away from the foundation, so your basement doesn't fill up with water. Same idea here, okay? We're building that berm up on each side of the pond, and it's allowing us to simply push the the water and runoff away from the pond and around, okay? So now I have a really nice pit here on the bottom of the pond, all filled with nice gravel down here. We have the pipe coming out, 3-inch pipe coming out, going 45 degrees up, a 45-degree elbow out, okay? And the end of our pipe that comes out of the ground where the water is discharging, we want to put some kind of a strainer on it, all right? So let me just do that here, all right? We're gonna put some kind of like little strainer cap on the end of it, all right? Because we don't want any critters getting in that pipe. You know, chipmunks making a nest, or, you know, little ground squirrels, or whatever, snakes, frogs, whatever. We don't want anything in that pipe. We want it to stay nice and clear and clean, so all that water can just flow right out, okay? Now, as we were building this pond, all right, we had an issue because I use 4-inch bottom drains. So as we were building this pond and the groundwater was slowly seeping in right after I dug the hole, all right, we needed to be able to put my bottom drains in and all my piping out for my gravity-fed filter. But the silicone seals on the bottom drains had to dry and cure before I can fill it with water, or before the groundwater underneath the liner came up and got it all wet. All right, so basically what I did, let me show you briefly here. Let's say this here is the bottom of my pond, all right? We put a bottom drain in. Here's my lid on the bottom drain, okay? And we had our pipe work coming out. All right, and it runs out to my filters, okay? Again, like I said, we have silicone all in the seal up here around my bottom drain, okay? That has to dry. So if all the water is building up underneath this liner, all right, and I don't want that silicone to get wet. So what we did was, next to my bottom drain, we just dug a little hole, all right? Just dug a little hole next to the bottom drain. And we stuck in there a little, basically a little submersible fountain pump, like a little 150 gallon per hour fountain pump. We stuck it in here, and we run little hose tubing out. All right. And we left it like that overnight. So any water that started to build up around this bottom drain would come here and fill up, you know, in this little pit first, okay? And the little pump would just be pumping out, you know, muddy, dirty water all night, all right? The next morning we come back in. The bottom drain silicone is dry, it's cured, it's good, all right? So what we simply did is we took our liner, right? We just pulled our liner up, right? We just pulled it up like this. We removed our pump. I don't know if I can do this with the eraser. We removed the pump and the little pit underneath, okay? And then we simply just put our liner, we filled up with the hole with dirt, you know, packed it all down again, and put our liner back down. Okay? And we were done. And that was it. And then we started filling the pond up with water, because right away I want to get water in this pond so that the liner doesn't start floating. Okay? So yeah, so that's basically it. I hope you kind of got the idea here of how to do this and why to do this, all right? It can cause a lot of damage if we get water underneath the pond, and the, you know, the pond liner starts floating, and you know, all your fish can end up on your lawn. You know, the plants are all knocked over, the liner's all stretched and ripped apart. Preformed ponds can lift right up out of the ground and get all messed up. So it can be a real nightmare scenario. So I hope that helps you out. It's something to think about. Again, if you have heavy clay soils that's going to hold that water, you know, we need to be able to have a system to get that water out freely from underneath your pond. Now I will say, within a couple days, within, you know, 2-3 days after we were building this pond and I had these drains installed underneath, I filled my pond up with water. We had a slow, steady trickle of water coming out from my little drain pipe there. Okay, so it definitely was working. We were lucky enough that where this pond was in his yard, he had a slight little pitch in his ground in the backyard, and we were able to run that drain pipe out so that the water would just run down the back of his property, and you know, it wasn't an issue. It's not a tremendous amount of water that comes out. Providing, you know, we can keep a slow, steady stream coming out of there, nothing will build up underneath. But that slow, steady stream can end up being a lot of water underneath that pond liner quickly during a heavy rain, or, you know, just the groundwater seeping in, like I said, with snow melt and stuff in the early spring. So it's really important that we, you know, address this issue while we're building the pond and not have a major problem after our pond is built. Okay, so all right, well, thanks for watching. I hope the video, you know, helped you out a little bit and gave you some ideas. And you know, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're into koi ponds and you're looking to, you know, learn more about it or build your own pond. I have a ton of videos here for you guys. Please check it out. I appreciate the support, and thank you, and we'll see you again soon in another video. Take care. Thanks. Bye.